First Contact's Misconception. Commander Maya Patel stood motionless before the Galactic Classification Council, her weathered combat dress uniform a stark contrast to the shimmering biosynthetic garments of the assembled alien dignitaries. The council chamber's arching crystal spires and floating holograms might have impressed someone else, but after 15 years of special operations in Earth's most brutal conflict zones, Maya found their attempted grandeur almost quaint. Species assessment continuing, announced the chief assessor, a towering crystalline being whose translucent form rippled with patterns of light. Military capability analysis, prehistoric to early industrial, primary weapons, chemical propellants, and crude fission devices. Space travel capability, minimal. Threat assessment, negligible. Maya maintained her stoic expression, though amusement threatened to break through her professional facade. The council had spent 6 hours debating humanity's placement in their species classification system, and they'd managed to get almost everything wrong. She'd expected better from a civilization that claimed to be the galaxy's peacekeepers. The species shows concerning aggressive tendencies, noted a serpentine delegate, their scales shifting colors as they spoke. Yet their technological limitations suggest minimal threat potential. I recommend classification as Category 3, developing species with limited integration access. Objection: rumbled a massive entity composed of living stone and plasma. Their historical records indicate constant internal warfare. This suggests fundamental instability. Maya cleared her throat softly, drawing their attention. If the council permits, I'd like to address these concerns. The chief assessor's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been surprise. The military representative may speak. Thank you, Maya said, carefully choosing her words. I notice your analysis focuses heavily on our current technology level. However, I suggest considering our rate of advancement. Humanity went from first powered flight to landing on our moon in just 66 years. In the past century alone, we've mastered nuclear fission, begun exploring quantum computing, and developed primitive AI. The council members exchanged troubled glances. The stone being's plasma cores flared. This rate of progress is concerning. I prefer to think of it as promising, Maya replied smoothly. It demonstrates our adaptability. Speaking of which, your earlier assessment of our military capability seemed incomplete. Would the council be interested in a practical demonstration? Unnecessary, the chief assessor declared. Our scans show only basic kinetic weapons and primitive explosives. No energy weapons, no shield technology, no neural disruptors. Even your personal armor is simple impact protection. Maya nodded. Yet these basic tools have proven remarkably effective throughout our history. Perhaps that's worth considering in your evaluation. The serpentine delegate waved a dismissive appendage. Effective against equally primitive opponents. Against modern galactic threats, such methods would be useless. Interesting perspective, Maya said. In that case, would the council be interested in a joint training exercise? Your security forces against a small team of human military personnel. Standard training protocols, no live ammunition. It might help inform your classification decision. The chamber fell silent. The council members huddled together, communicating in rapid-fire clicks and whistles. After a moment, the chief assessor turned back to Maya. Proposal denied. Such a demonstration would be unnecessary and potentially disruptive. However, it paused, manipulating its controls. We will accept you as humanity's military liaison to the council. Your primitive tactical knowledge may prove useful in understanding other developing species. Maya bowed slightly. I'm honored to accept the position. As she left the chamber, Maya allowed herself a small smile. They'd made the same mistake so many others had throughout history, confusing simple with primitive, underestimating the value of practical experience over theoretical superiority. Her new position aboard the station would give her plenty of time to observe and learn. And if her instincts about the galaxy's stability were correct, that knowledge might prove very useful very soon. The council had just classified humanity as harmless, And Maya knew from hard experience that being underestimated had won more battles than any weapon ever created. She had a feeling the galaxy was in for quite an education. The art of asymmetric warfare. Fleet Admiral Xanthor's command center aboard the Galactic Defense Force headquarters reminded Maya of a theatrical stage. Holographic displays showed various battle formations that looked more like ceremonial dances than military tactics. The walls gleamed with perfectly polished weapons that had clearly never seen combat. Your species' military protocols are quite. The translator paused, searching for the right word. Primitive. Maya watched as the tall, crystalline being's multiple eye clusters studied a display of Earth's military history. Primitive can be effective. Admiral. Xanthor brought up a new hologram showing two opposing forces in perfect symmetrical formations. This is how civilized species conduct warfare. Both sides declare their intentions, agree upon battlefield conditions, and engage according to established protocols. Maya studied the holographic units moving in precise, predictable patterns. And if one side doesn't follow these protocols, that would be uncivilized, Xanthor stated, as if this explained everything. The conversation was interrupted by a shrill alarm. The command center's displays flared red, showing multiple distress signals from the outer colonies. Maya leaned forward, instantly alert as she processed the tactical data streaming across the screens. Unknown vessels attacking Outpost Sigma-7, reported a junior officer, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with distress. They're not following any recognized combat protocols. Maya watched the grainy footage of sleek, predatory ships systematically dismantling the outpost's defenses. They targeted communications first, then power systems, before launching ground forces. Classic shock and awe tactics. Impossible. Xanthor's crystalline form flickered with agitation. They cannot attack without first declaring their intentions and receiving formal acknowledgement. They just did, Maya said grimly. How long until reinforcements arrive? 26 standard hours. Our response fleet must first organize into proper battle formation and the outpost will fall in less than 2. Maya interrupted, earning shocked looks from the alien officers. Those colonists need help now. Xanthor's color darkened. The protocols clearly state, Admiral. Maya cut in again, her voice carrying the weight of combat experience. I have a rapid response team of human peacekeepers stationed aboard my ship. We can deploy in 15 minutes. Absolutely not. Your primitive weapons and tactics will. Another alarm blared. The displays showed the outpost's outer defenses falling. Those are your people dying out there, Maya said quietly. Let us help. Xanthor's crystal segments shifted in what Maya had learned was their species' equivalent of internal conflict. The Council classified your species as harmless. You have no advanced weapons, no shield technology. No, Maya agreed. What we have is experience. Humanity spent centuries fighting asymmetric warfare. Sometimes being under-equipped against a superior force teaches you things technology can't. The Admiral's communications crystal pulsed as more distress signals flooded in. Finally, they seemed to deflate slightly. You have authorization to assist, but you must follow proper. Maya was already moving. Contact Commander Chen aboard the Terra. Launch all ready teams immediately. Authorization code Patil Alpha 7. As she strode from the command center, Maya activated her neural link to the Terra's tactical network. Listen up, people. Hostile forces have breached Outpost Sigma-7. Unknown capabilities, but they're well organized and efficient. The locals don't stand a chance using conventional tactics. She smiled grimly as her team acknowledged. Time to show the galaxy why humanity's greatest strength isn't our technology. It's our ability to adapt. Deploy for maximum chaos. Let's remind everyone why underestimating humans is always a mistake. Behind her, she heard Xanthor ordering their forces to prepare for proper combat engagement. Maya knew that by the time the Admiral's fleet arrived in their perfect formation, her team would have already changed the galaxy's understanding of warfare forever. The next few hours would demonstrate exactly why harmless was the last word anyone should use to describe humanity. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon wasn't the most advanced. It was the one your enemy never saw coming. When protocols fall. Outpost Sigma 7's central plaza had become a war zone. The invaders, sleek, biomechanical entities that moved with predatory grace, had expected an easy victory over the ceremonial defenders. Instead, they found themselves facing an enemy that refused to play by any rules they understood. Maya watched through her tactical display as her teams moved like ghosts through the settlement's underground maintenance tunnels. The aliens had superior technology, but they'd never considered that someone would use waste management systems as infiltration routes. Their arrogance would cost them dearly. Strike Team Alpha in position. Lieutenant Sarah Rodriguez's voice came through crystal clear despite the electromagnetic interference. Ready to crash their party. All teams, execute on my mark, Maya commanded from her position in the makeshift command center. She'd converted a maintenance depot into a tactical headquarters in minutes, something that had scandalized the local security forces. They still couldn't understand why she preferred a basement with good sight lines over their ceremonial command spire. But Commander, the local security chief, a crystalline being named Zix, protested, "Your forces aren't in proper formation. They haven't declared their combat intentions." "That's the point," Maya replied, watching as her team's signatures moved into final position. "Strike teams, you are weapons free. Give them hell." What followed was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare. While the invaders focused on the main defensive positions, expecting a formal response, human combat teams struck from unexpected angles. EMP charges, considered primitive by galactic standards, disabled sophisticated shield systems, simple smoke grenades, dismissed as theatrical devices by the Council, rendered advanced targeting systems useless. "This is unprecedented," Zix stammered, watching as a squad of human Marines used simple grappling lines to scale a building and ambush a group of invaders from above. "They're not following any recognized combat doctrine. They're following the oldest combat doctrine there is," Maya replied, directing another team to flank the enemy's position. "Hit them where they aren't looking, use their strengths against them, and never do what they expect." The turning point came when Rodriguez's team breached the invaders' command post, not through the heavily defended entrance, but by cutting through a maintenance panel that the alien scans had dismissed as irrelevant. The enemy leaders, expecting a frontal assault they could repel with their superior shields, found themselves facing human Marines armed with primitive shotguns that their personal force fields weren't calibrated to stop. Within hours, the remaining invaders were retreating in disarray, their carefully planned assault undone by what they considered obsolete tactics and technology. As Maya's team secured the outpost, she noticed the local defenders watching them with a mixture of awe and unease. "I don't understand," Zix admitted as they surveyed the aftermath. "Your weapons are inferior. Your technology is centuries behind. How did you defeat an enemy that even our most advanced systems couldn't stop?" Maya knelt to examine one of the disabled enemy units. Its neural interface was remarkably advanced, but it had been disabled by a simple electromagnetic pulse. "Technology isn't everything," she explained. "These invaders, like your people, relied too heavily on advanced systems and rigid protocols. They never considered that someone might simply ignore the rules of engagement they took for granted. But that's not how warfare is conducted," Zix protested weakly. "Warfare isn't conducted," Maya replied, standing to face the security chief. "It's survived. Something humanity learned through centuries of fighting against superior forces. Sometimes the most effective weapon isn't the most advanced. It's the one your enemy doesn't think to defend against." As if to emphasize her point, Admiral Xanthor's response fleet finally arrived in perfect formation, ready to engage in proper combat protocols, only to find the battle long over. Maya couldn't help but smile at their confusion. "Your council classified us as harmless," she reminded Zix. That's fine. Being underestimated is an advantage we're used to. But remember this, humanity didn't survive and thrive by following rules made by others. We did it by adapting, by thinking differently, and by understanding that sometimes the best way to win isn't to play the game, it's to change it entirely. The security chief's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been understanding. Around them, human Marines helped local defenders secure the area, sharing techniques for improvised defenses and unconventional tactics. The galaxy's definition of warfare was changing, one lesson at a time. Maya knew this was just the beginning. The invaders would return, probably with countermeasures against the tactics that had worked today. But that was fine. Humans were good at improvising, at finding new ways to solve problems. That's what made them dangerous. But that's not how warfare is conducted, Six protested weakly. Warfare isn't conducted, Maya replied, standing to face the security chief. It's survived. Something humanity learned through centuries of fighting against superior forces. Sometimes the most effective weapon isn't the most advanced. It's the one your enemy doesn't think to defend against. As if to emphasize her point, Admiral Xanthor's response fleet finally arrived in perfect formation, ready to engage in proper combat protocols, only to find the battle long over. Maya couldn't help but smile at their confusion. Your council classified us as harmless, she reminded Zix. That's fine. Being underestimated is an advantage we're used to, but remember this, humanity didn't survive and thrive by following rules made by others. We did it by adapting, by thinking differently, and by understanding that sometimes the best way to win isn't to play the game, it's to change it entirely. The security chief's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been understanding. Around them, human Marines helped local defenders secure the area, sharing techniques for improvised defenses and unconventional tactics. The galaxy's definition of warfare was changing, one lesson at a time. Maya knew this was just the beginning. The invaders would return, probably with countermeasures against the tactics that had worked today. But that was fine. Humans were good at improvising, at finding new ways to solve problems. That's what made them dangerous. Not their weapons, not their technology, but their ability to look at a superior force and think, we can beat them anyway. The price of victory. The Galactic Council's emergency session chamber hummed with tension. Holographic displays showed burning worlds and shattered defense fleets, the aftermath of the invaders' escalating attacks. Maya stood before the assembled representatives, her combat uniform still bearing scorch marks from her last engagement. What you suggest is barbaric. The chief assessor's crystalline form pulsed with agitation. Attacking supply lines, targeting command and control systems. These are civilian infrastructure. They're military targets, Maya countered, her voice steady. The enemy is using your own protocols against you. They know you won't strike their support networks because you consider it uncivilized. That's why they're winning. The past month had seen the mysterious invaders, now identified as the Vorax, adapt to conventional galactic defense strategies. They'd learned to exploit the predictable responses, the rigid formations, the announced engagements. Dozens of outposts had fallen while defense fleets waited in formation for proper battle protocols to be observed. But there are rules to warfare, protested a Serpentine delegate. Standards that separate us from savages. Maya activated a holographic display of her own, showing tactical data from recent battles. With respect, those rules are getting your people killed. The Vorax understand something you don't. Real warfare isn't about honor or ceremony. It's about achieving objectives. She highlighted specific engagement zones. Look at these patterns. They're using your infrastructure against you. Civilian transport networks to move troops. Commercial communication relays to coordinate attacks. They know you won't strike these targets because of your protocols. Then we must improve our defensive capabilities, the Stone Beam delegate rumbled. Perhaps if we enhanced our shield technology. Technology isn't the answer, Maya interrupted, earning shocked looks. The Vorax aren't winning because their technology is superior. They're winning because they're willing to do what you aren't. The chamber erupted in protests. Maya waited for them to quiet before continuing. You think humanity is primitive because we still use kinetic weapons and explosive devices, but we keep these primitive tools because we learned a hard lesson. Sometimes the old ways work best. Sometimes you need to fight fire with fire. You're suggesting we abandon civilized warfare. The chief assessor's tone was incredulous. I'm suggesting you survive. Maya's voice carried the weight of centuries of human conflict. Every time humanity faced extinction, we adapted. We didn't let rules written by others dictate our survival. She brought up footage from her team's successful defense of Outpost Sigma 7. Look at this engagement. We won because we did what the enemy thought was impossible. We used maintenance tunnels instead of main corridors, improvised explosives instead of energy weapons, tactics they dismissed as beneath them. But such methods, the Serpentine delegate began, saved lives. Maya finished firmly. More than your protocols did. The Vorax are counting on you to keep fighting the way you always have. That's why they're going to win. Unless you're willing to change. Admiral Xanthor, who had been quietly observing, finally spoke. Commander Patel's methods, while unconventional, have proven effective. Perhaps there is wisdom in adapting our approach. The cost of maintaining our protocols is becoming too high, added another delegate, their holographic form flickering with concern. We've lost more worlds in the past month than in the previous century of civilized warfare. Maya nodded. I'm not asking you to abandon your principles. I'm asking you to understand that principles mean nothing if your civilization doesn't survive to uphold them. She brought up a new tactical display. I have a plan to strike the Vorax where they're truly vulnerable. It won't be clean. It won't be ceremonial. But it will work if you're willing to let us fight this war the human way. The council chamber fell silent as her words sank in. Finally, the chief assessor spoke, their crystalline form dimmed with what might have been resignation. Present your plan, Commander. We will consider all options. As Maya outlined her strategy, she saw the growing realization in the alien delegates' expressions. They were beginning to understand what humanity had learned through countless conflicts. Sometimes victory required more than superior technology or honorable conduct. Sometimes it required the willingness to do the uncomfortable, the unconventional, the unexpected. The galaxy was about to learn why humanity's greatest strength wasn't their weapons or their technology. It was their unflinching determination to survive, no matter the cost. The Vorax had made a fatal mistake. They'd assumed that primitive meant predictable. They were about to learn otherwise. Redefining Harmless. The Vorax flagship's bridge was everything Maya's command center wasn't: sleek, advanced, and now completely vulnerable. She watched through her tactical display as human and alien strike teams moved through the vessel's maintenance systems, placing charges at key structural points. The enemy had finally learned to scan for unconventional entry points, but they'd learned too late. All teams in position, Lieutenant Rodriguez reported, ready to crash their perfect little war. Maya checked the tactical overlay one final time. The combined galactic human fleet hung in space behind a field of debris, wreckage that the Vorax's sensors read as dead ships, thanks to some creative electromagnetic manipulation. Sometimes the oldest tricks worked best. Admiral Xanthor, Maya called over the secure channel. Your forces are ready. The crystalline being's voice had lost its ceremonial tone over the past months of brutal warfare. Strike groups are in position, Commander, though I still find this strategy unsettling. Maya allowed herself a grim smile. That's why it's going to work. Execute on my mark. The past 3 months had transformed the galaxy's understanding of warfare. The Galactic Council had finally embraced human tactical doctrine, learning that sometimes victory required stepping outside their comfort zone. The Vorax, expecting another formal engagement, had no idea what was coming. All teams, execute Operation Trojan Horse. Across the Vorax flagship, precisely placed charges detonated, not to destroy, but to disable. Shield generators failed. Communications arrays went dark. Artificial gravity fluctuated. And in that moment of confusion, the real attack began. The debris field came alive as hidden human and alien strike craft powered up. The Vorax, their sensors scrambled by the electromagnetic chaos, never saw the attack coming from what they'd dismissed as battlefield wreckage. Their perfect formations broke apart under assault from what seemed like ghosts in the void. Multiple hostile contacts. A Vorax commander's intercepted transmission crackled with panic. They're not following any recognized patterns. Where are their formal declarations of engagement? The time for ceremonies is over. Maya transmitted on all frequencies. Surrender now, or learn exactly how uncivilized we can be. The Vorax's response was predictable. They attempted to form up into their standard combat formations, expecting their superior technology to prevail. But they were fighting an enemy that had spent months studying their patterns, learning their weaknesses, and preparing to exploit every assumption they made. Human Marines, armed with what the galaxy had dismissed as primitive weaponry, breached their hull at precisely calculated points. Galactic shock troops, trained in unconventional warfare by Maya's team, struck from impossible angles. The Vorax found their advanced systems countered by simple solutions they'd never considered. Status report. Maya commanded as the battle reached its climax. Enemy command and control is fractured. Rodriguez reported. They're trying to regroup, but they can't coordinate their responses. They're fighting like we used to. Everyone following protocols instead of adapting. Maya nodded. Time to end this. Admiral Xanthor. Execute final phase. The galactic fleet emerged from stealth positions, another primitive human tactic they'd adopted. The Vorax, their formations broken and their commanders in chaos, found themselves caught in a trap that violated every rule of civilized warfare. The battle ended not with a ceremonial exchange of fire, but with targeted strikes at critical systems. The mighty Vorax fleet, which had terrorized the galaxy for months, was undone by an enemy they'd dismissed as primitive and predictable. Hours later, Maya stood in the council chamber again, delivering her final report. The chief assessor's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been embarrassment. We owe humanity an apology, they admitted. We mistook simplicity for weakness, tradition for limitation. We failed to understand that true strength lies not in technology or protocols, but in the ability to adapt. The Vorax made the same mistake, Maya replied. They thought that because we didn't follow their rules, we didn't understand warfare. They never realized that humanity's greatest victories came when we were outgunned, outmatched, and underestimated. She gestured to the tactical displays showing the aftermath of their victory. We didn't win because our weapons were better. We won because we never let anyone else define what was possible. The council chamber was silent for a moment before Admiral Xanthor spoke. The classification committee has revised humanity's status. You are no longer considered a harmless species. Maya smiled. Good. But remember, our strength isn't in our capacity for violence. It's in our ability to think differently, to adapt, to find solutions where others see only obstacles. She paused, looking at each council member. We're not harmless, but we're not just warriors either. We're survivors, innovators, and when necessary, we're the galaxy's best teachers in how to fight impossible odds. The chief assessor nodded slowly. Perhaps that is why the universe guided our paths to cross. Not so that we could teach you civilization, but so we could teach each other how to survive it. Maya finished. As she left the chamber, Maya reflected on how far they'd all come. The galaxy had learned that true civilization wasn't about following rules. It was about knowing when to break them, when to adapt, and when to rewrite them entirely. They'd classified humanity as harmless. They'd learned they were anything but. And that was exactly how humanity liked it.